So I have a flat tire on a 2010 Cannondale F9 mountain bike. And I'm going to show you everything that I'm going to do to change this tire in a most effective manner. Alright, so we're going to start with loosening up the skewer. The skewer is on one side, this knob, nut rather, and the quick release here. I'm simply going to undo the quick release. That would normally be much tighter. You want it to actually be pretty tight. Just for illustration's sake, I have already loosened it up, and so I'm going to go ahead and loosen it up further because we need a little bit of space in between the quick release and the nut and the frame in order to pull off the rear tire. Now, because we're dealing with a rear tire on a modern bike, we've got the hanger here that's in the way. Now, I like to use a tire lever, which we're going to be using a little bit later in order to actually pull the tire off of the rim. But you're always going to have one of these, and so it's really useful to use the tire lever while you are pulling off the rear tire. And so notice that I am using the tire lever here to pull up on the chain, and I have successfully pulled out the tire by using the tire lever. And all I did was I pulled up on the chain like this, I pulled this way, and that allowed me to get the wheel out without getting grease on my hands, which of course these components are going to require a regular greasing, and so they are going to have a decent amount of oil or grease on them, and you will get quite dirty. You will get stuff on your clothes if you don't do this. So I highly recommend it. All right, so the only assumption that I've made here, there were two assumptions. One assumption was that the skewer was already loosened just a little bit, the quick release mechanism. Additionally, I did already unclamp the brakes here, and so there is a quick release on the rear brake here, the rear V brake, and so it just fastens like so, and I already simply loosened that up in order to allow me to remove the rear wheel. All right, so the next thing that I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be using the tire lever to pull the tire off of this rim. Now, I'm just looking to see, how much play I have here. And I'm going to go ahead and turn my tire lever around here in order to get it underneath the tire. And once I have that, I am simply going to grab the tire, and I am going to, well, because I'm right-handed, and because of where the tire is at this time, I'm going to push to my right. And so I'm just grabbing the wheel and I'm pushing to the right, and that is enabling me to pull this tire off. And so there, in the matter of a few seconds, it would have been quicker, but I'm trying to illustrate this. I have begun pulling off the tire, and now I'm going to go the other direction. And so there's that. All right, so what I'm going to do now, since I have unseated at the edge of the tire, I am going to go ahead and pull out the tube, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert the new tube, and I won't actually be pulling off the tire at all. All right, and so I'll go ahead and touch base here in just a moment after I have removed the tube and I'm ready to put in the new tube. Okay, so I have pulled out the tube and I am in the process of pulling out my Kevlar liner here that I use to prevent flats. Of course, that's the goal. You can see this white substance. I have packed the liner and tube in here with baby powder in order to prevent rub flats. And so I'm afraid that actually this was not a rub flat, that it might have been something else. So I am just reaching my hand in here and I am just feeling around for some debris, kind of looking at the tire surface to see if there is some explanation for why we are seeing this issue with this flat. And I'm still just feeling around inside the tire to see if there's any clear explanation for why this happened. It's just a spot, but it is just a spot. It's not a thorn or anything like that. Well, I have been around this wheel and I have felt every bit inside the tire and I haven't noticed anything. So I'm just going to go ahead and take my new tube here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my liner back in here, and so I'm just going to use one hand to hold the tire. I'm going to use the other hand to fit the liner back up inside here, and then I'm going to take the new tube and I'm going to fit the new tube up inside the tire in between the rim and the liner. And then I'm going to take some baby powder. I'm going to put some baby powder around there to prevent rub flats. And then we'll be seating the tire again and airing it back up. All right, so I'll go ahead and touch base with you here once I get the liner and new tube back in, and we'll see the rest of the process. All right, so I'm finishing up putting the liner inside the tire. And so this is the last bit of the liner that I'm fitting in there, and there you can see one end of the liner overlapping ever so slightly with the other end of the liner. And so now I'm going to go ahead and find the hole for the valve stem, and it looks like it's right there. I'm going to go ahead and put the tire in there, and we'll go ahead and touch base once I get the tire back in, the tube back inside the tire, and we'll go ahead and touch base here again and see the rest of the process. Alright, so I've begun the process of putting the tube inside the tire here. I've put the valve stem through the hole, and I've put a cap on it just to keep it in one place, and now I'm just going to basically go around the tire and I'm going to fit in this tube really quickly. I'll touch base with you here in just a minute. Alright, so we're just doing a quick touch base here. I've mostly gotten the new tube inside the tire. I'm fitting it in here, just making sure that I don't pinch it. I'm being very careful to fit it into the tire inside the liner, and we'll go ahead and touch base here in a minute once I actually get it in there, and we'll go ahead and seat the tire. The bead is what I'm the word that I'm looking for. We'll seat the bead of the tire, and we'll go ahead and get this thing aired back up. The tube change is complete without the application of a little bit of baby powder. I've got some just bottom of the line, very cheap baby powder that I got at the corner store, and I'm basically just going to be applying the baby powder to the tube. And so I'm just going to go around here and apply some baby powder, rotate this thing around, apply a little bit more baby powder, rotate this thing around, apply a little bit more baby powder. Rotate this thing around, apply a little bit more baby powder. And what that does is it prevents rubbing between the wheel liner. So just to make sure you know what I'm talking about, there is a liner there you can see. And if you don't do this, it could rub. And in an event where you don't have to worry about goat heads or anything like that, you're a little bit of friction between your tube and that liner will wear down a section of your tube, and it will cause a flat. And so that's the reason why I do this. Alright, just another quick touch base here. I am seating the bead of the tire, and I've just started using my tire lever, and I've started seating the bead of the tire, and I'm basically just going to go around the tire like this and seat it. I'm going to be quite concerned about this part. I'm going to go ahead and rotate the tire, the wheel, in order to have very good access to this part of the tire. I'm going to fit it back up inside the tire, the tube back up inside the tire, and very carefully just make sure that I don't pinch it, and then once I get it in there, I'm going to go ahead and seat the bead. We'll touch base here in just a minute. Alright, so this is just a little bit of process. I've gotten the new tube fit back up inside the tire here, but of course some of the tire decided to come back off the rim. However, I've got most of the new tube in here. There's just a little bit there that I need to kind of finesse inside the tire and get the bead seated, and then we'll go ahead and air this thing up. Okay, so I've almost gotten the bead completely seated here. I've turned the wheel around, and now I'm working on this last bit here. I'm simply going to move this tire lever over to the left, and there you go. The entire bead is seated. Alright, so the last part here, I'm going to set my tire lever off to the side here, and I am going to start looking at getting this wheel mounted again. Alright, so I'm going to use my tire lever again. I take this tire lever, I'm going to pull this chain up. It's currently on second chain ring, second gear, and I'm not bothering to use the first gear or the 8th gear. I'm not bothering with any of that. I'm just going to go ahead and seat the second gear on the cassette here. So it's the second biggest one there. I'm just going to go ahead and use my tire lever to seat the second gear on the cassette right there. And then I'm going to go ahead and set the skewer down inside the dropouts there. All right, we'll touch base here in just a minute. Right, and so I've gotten the wheel in here, almost on the dropouts, and I've gotten the chain where I want it to be. Well, almost where I want it to be. It's on number 3 on the cassette rather than number 2. It's close enough. It's going to be all right. And I'm using my tire lever here to hold up the chain to get it out of the way so that I can successfully maneuver the wheel and the cassette into the dropouts and onto the chain. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get the skewer onto the dropouts. I'm gonna tighten up the skewer, and then we'll see about airing this thing up. Alright, so I've gotten the wheel on here, I've pedaled just a little bit, and the drivetrain has shifted to the second gear on the cassette. I have tightened up the skewer a little bit. I'm about to latch the quick release. Now, I want to draw your attention to the fact that I've gotten this thing rather tight, and I'm going to be pushing down quite a bit so that it's nice and tight, because we want that thing to be nice and tight. And at this point, not a little bit of pressure will loosen that thing. And so the rear wheel is aligned here, and I'm going to go ahead and tighten the rear brake here to connect these components again, and just need to actually do it here. Okay, so now that's connected, and let's see, rear brake is the right lever here. So I'm going to go ahead and press the right lever, and there you can see rear brakes are working perfectly fine. Everything is good. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put some air in this tire. Lastly, I want to make sure you know. Alright, so I've been doing various things and I haven't been focusing on the valve stem here. We actually want to make sure that that thing is straight. And so I'm just going to go ahead and grab the entire tire here and make sure that it's straight. And so there you can see that it's straight. You don't want it to be crooked, because as you air up the tire, it will put pressure on the valve stem, which will press against the metal. And it could actually like lacerate the rubber around the valve stem and create a leak. You don't want that. And so I think that's the last bit here. So this is a rather quick tire change. I think around the entire time that I've been working has been about 15 or 20 minutes, and I haven't had to worry about reseating both sides of the tire, because I basically left the tire on the rim, and I basically just took a little bit of time to make sure that the took a little bit of time to make sure that the tire and tube got in there without pinching the tube at all. And I did put a little bit of baby powder in there to prevent rub flats. So this thing is put together and it's ready to go for, you know, the next 500 miles until, you know, something, you know, makes its way into the tube and creates another puncture. All right, so that's all I have for you about changing the rear tube on this 2010 Cannondale F9 mountain bike. Okay, I have this thing aired up, 70 pounds worth. I'm just gonna go ahead and take my favorite cap here. I'm gonna put it on, and this thing will be done. Okay, and we're ready to flip this thing around. She's good to go for another 500 or 1,000 miles, or however long it takes for something to sneak its way into the tube. All right, take care, everyone. One last point that I want to add here, I have gone ahead and rotated the wheel and removed the baby powder from the brake rim here. And I've done that on both sides. Now, usually I would just take the wheel outside and apply the baby powder to the tube and just make sure that You know, I didn't get baby powder everywhere, but at the same time, you know, I'm trying to illustrate everything. And so, you know, I promise my fiance is not gonna find this baby powder on the floor. I'm gonna go ahead and sweep it up. And now you all know how to make sure that you put some baby powder in there and prevent rub flats.